Falls of Niagara are a series of voluminous waterfalls on the Niagara River. They are the second largest waterfalls in the world, after Victoria Falls in South Africa. 1/5 of all the fresh water in the world lies in the 4 upper Great Lakes: Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Superior, and Lake Erie. All of this outflow empties into the Niagara River and eventually cascades over the Niagara Falls. 750,000 U.S. gallons of water flow over both sets of falls every second. From here, the water travels 15 miles through many gorges until it reaches the 5th Great Lake, Lake Ontario. Niagara Falls straddles the international border between the Canadian province of Ontario and the state of New York. The falls are situated 17 miles north-northeast of Buffalo, New York, and 75 miles south-southeast of Toronto, Canada. The falls lie between the twin cities of Niagara Falls, Ontario, and Niagara Falls, New York. Niagara Falls is composed of 2 major sections: the Horseshoe Falls on the Canadian side of the border, and the American Falls on the side of the United States, which is also known as the American side. These falls are separated by an island known as Goat Island. The American Falls are themselves divided into 2 distinct falls as well. The larger of the 2 is known simply as the American Falls. The smaller waterfall, divided from the larger American Falls by the landmass known as Luna Island, is known as the Bridal Veil Falls. The length of the American Falls is 1,060 feet across and is 176 feet high, with 70 feet of that being free fall for the water due to the eroded rock formations at the base of the falls. On average, the flow of water over the American and Bridal Veil Falls is about 75,000 to 150,000 U.S. gallons per second. The American Falls gets about 10% of the flow of the Niagara River, while the Horseshoe Falls gets the other 90% of the flow. The torrent of water passing over the crest of the American Falls is about 2 feet deep. The length of the brink of the Horseshoe Falls is 2,600 feet, and a height of 167 feet, an estimated 16 stories high. The flow over the Horseshoe Falls varies to about 675,000 U.S. gallons per second. That's almost twice an Olympic-sized swimming pool with a 12-foot diving well, weighing in at 360,000 gallons of water every second. In the middle of the Horseshoe Falls, at the crest, the water is about 10 feet deep as it drops over the ledge. The depth of the water at the bottom of the Horseshoe Falls is 184 feet deep, which is 17 feet deeper than the actual Horseshoe Falls is tall. speed of the water passing over the falls is about 20 miles an hour. According to the United States Geological Survey, USGS, almost one-third of Horseshoe Falls lies within the territory of the United States. In addition, the Horseshoe Falls seem to be eroding away at a rate of nearly 6 feet a year. The rock is made up of dolostone and shale. Every night at dark, until around midnight, year-round, Niagara Falls is illuminated with colored lights from the Canadian side of the river. It was first illuminated at 10 p.m. on September the 14th, 1860, in the presence of the Prince of Wales. Today, the various colors used to illuminate the falls are white, red, yellow, green, and blue. 2 operators currently illuminate the falls at night. The standard color of each light is actually white, and the light show is controlled by a single operator who changes the controls of the lights by changing the combinations of the colored films in front of each light. The 21 lights generate an enormous 8.2 billion candle power of illumination. There are differing theories as to the origin of the name Niagara Falls. According to the Iroquoian scholar Bruce Trigger, Niagara is derived from the name given to a branch of the locally residing native Neutral Confederacy, who are described as being the Niagara people on several late 17th century French maps of the area. Another source claims that the word Niagara is derived from the Iroquois word Oniguara, meaning the strait. More than 14 million people visit Niagara Falls annually. It is estimated that if every visitor to Niagara Falls stayed there at least one night, over $1 billion would be added to the local economy. The number of visitors in 2008 was expected to total 20 million, and by 2009, the annual rate was expected to top 28 million. The Skyline Tower in Niagara Falls, Ontario, is the tallest structure in the area. It opened for business on the 6th of October, 1965. The tower is 520 feet tall from street level and 775 feet in height from the bottom of the falls. There are 3 outside-mounted elevators and 2 restaurants, one of which revolves once every hour. The Skyline Tower is seen in the movie Superman 2. Niagara Falls is also the backdrop for the 1953 film Niagara, starring Marilyn Monroe and Joseph Cotten, and local footage of the falls was shot in October 2006 to portray the World's End sequence of the movie Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Illusionist David Copperfield appeared to go over Niagara Falls in a stunt he performed in 1991. The Maid of the Mist is the name of the boat tour of Niagara Falls. The actual boats used are each named the Maid of the Mist, followed by a Roman numeral designating which actual boat is in question. This tour is available from either the American side or the Canadian side of the Niagara River, just below the falls themselves. These boats start off at a calm point downstream of the falls on either side of the river, and then travel up the river past the American and Bridal Veil Falls, and directly into the dense spray of mist inside the curve of the Horseshoe Falls, the engines straining to get as close as possible to the plunging roar of the Horseshoe Falls before being forced back downstream again, and then to turn and travel back to the original point of launch. The first Maid of the Mist was launched as a ferry service in 1846. The Maid of the Mist is well known for its role in the July 9, 1960 rescue of Roger Woodward, a 7-year-old boy who became the first person to survive a plunge over the Horseshoe Falls with nothing but a life jacket. The boat involved in the rescue, known as Maid 2, was retired from service in 1983 and relocated to the Amazon River, where it served as a missionary ship for years after. Notable passengers on the Maid of the Mist tour, in chronological order, include King Edward VII, President Theodore Roosevelt, Marilyn Monroe, Mikhail Gorbachev, the Duke and Duchess of York, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, Prince Charles, Princess Diana, Prince William, Prince Harry, and President Jimmy Carter and First Lady Rosalind Carter. There are a pair of attractions associated with the actual falls themselves, besides the Maid of the Mist tour boats. The Journey Behind the Falls on the Canadian side, and the Cave of the Winds tour on the American side of the falls. Both of these allow access to explore the falls from inside and behind the falls themselves. The Journey Behind the Falls is a series of tunnels and an observation platform extending some 46 meters behind the Horseshoe Falls. The Cave of the Winds is a tunnel elevator ride which descends 175 feet and exits right into the splashing waters off the lower borders of the American Falls. Kirk Jones of Canton, Michigan, became the first person to survive an unprotected trip over the Horseshoe Falls without a flotation device on October the 20th, 2003. He survived the 16-story fall with only battered ribs, scrapes, and bruises. The first person to go over the falls in a barrel and survive was a 63-year-old female schoolteacher. The flow of water over both sets of falls was stopped completely on March the 29th, 1848, due to an ice jam in the upper river which lasted for several hours. This is the only time which this has ever occurred. The falls did not actually freeze, but the flow of water was stopped to the point where people actually walked out and recovered artifacts from the riverbed. The falls is actually frozen over in winter to the point where it can be safely traversed on foot. While the tremendous force of water never really stops flowing, mounds of ice as thick as 50 feet deep can be formed. If the winter is cold enough, the ice bridge will form across the river and can extend for several miles down the river until it reaches the lower rapids. Until 1912, visitors were allowed to actually walk out onto the ice bridge and view the falls from below. The local paper dated the 24th of February, 1888, carried a story which reported that at least 20,000 people watched or tobogganed on the ice. Shanties built on the ice bridges selling liquor, photographs, and curiosities abounded. On February the 4th, 1912, the ice bridge broke up, and 3 tourists lost their lives, thus ending forever the tourist attraction on the frozen ice bridge beneath Niagara Falls. In June of 1969, the American Falls was completely dried up, so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers could effect repairs to the faults they found in the rock structure of the falls. Faults that could have, if left untreated, hastened the retreat of the falls. These are the erosions which threaten to forever change the shape of the falls into a new form, such as a series of rapids instead of a waterfall. In November of 1969, the temporary dam was dynamited, and the flow was again restored to the American Falls. One should plan to visit these falls at least once in his lifetime. The sheer hypnotic magnitude of the roaring falling water must be experienced in person. As Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had Sherlock Holmes say in one of the adventures, "From a single drop of water one might hypothesize an Atlantic." Or a Niagara. Without having either seen or heard of one or the other. But until one actually sees, hears, and feels one of the other for himself, one has no idea what one is actually missing.